Ron Culp is currently Senior Vice President and Managing Director of the Midwest operations of Ketchum, a leading public relations firm. He also serves as a global corporate strategist in the firm's global corporate practice. Culp's 30-year career spans a broad range of communications activities with companies such as Citygate Sard Verbinnen, Sears Roebuck & Co., Sara Lee Corporation, Pitney Bowes Inc., and Eli Lilly. As a student at Indiana State, he served as editor of the campus newspaper, president of the statewide College Republicans, and the first student to have a speaking seat on the university's board of directors. He earned a bachelor's degree in political science and journalism from Indiana State. Culp serves as a board member of the Economic Club of Chicago, the Indiana State Foundation, and the Lincoln Park Zoo. He's also a former member of the Arthur W. Page Society and current member of the Planck Center for Leadership in Public Relations at the University of Alabama. Culp has demonstrated a strong commitment to public relations students and education, volunteering as a lecturer and advisor to public relations programs. He has served as a personal mentor to countless students and young professionals.
I think primarily the way I've always looked at it is pretty simple, and that is pulling together a group of people, and somebody from that group emerges as the leader by having found ways of bringing consensus within the group that results in what's best for the organization. Well, I think you start with experience. Which is essential, obviously. So, some time working within the profession. And then I think two would be patience, a lot of patience, which you get through the experience, and then a sense of humor. In patience, I'd probably also include in that the ability to listen. Oh, many of them. I think that number one would be great mentors at every stage of my life and career, as well as just some great opportunities. I've worked for some wonderful corporations that have had great leaders that embrace the idea of what public relations can do, and my mentors and that experience, I think, came together to turn me into what I guess you call a leader. Probably the most important thing I learned was that I'm not always right. And as a result of that, you have to pull in experiences from others, and that's where you gain your experience of finding out this is either a new idea that I've just heard and how to meld it all together. But I guess the insecurity of knowing that you're not always right allows you to listen better to others. There are many, but one that I hold in very high regard is Steve Harris. Steve retired a few years ago from General Motors, and I think the testament to how good he is, the current CEO of General Motors talked him into coming out of retirement to return to the company. And what that CEO saw in him was the ability to motivate his team and provide the kind of senior counsel that management within General Motors needed during this very difficult time for them. And now if you really see what's happening at General Motors, the company is pulling itself out of the mire it was caught in, and they will immediately credit a lot of it to a whole different attitude in public relations that Steve brings with everything he does. There are many. I mean, most people would, if you say historical, I look at historical going a whole gamut. I mean, you can go Ivy Lee and Bernays, but I'd like to go historical to when PR really started coming into the golden age, and that would be very obviously Harold Burson, Dan Edelman, Al Golan, people who really led the profession. And then I would add, because we definitely need to put her in there, and that'd be Betsy Plank. And Betsy not only had a great leadership experience at her company when she was at Ameritech and AT&T, but she carried it on beyond that, and she didn't just focus on her career. She decided that I'm going to be here to help a lot of people in this business, and so she goes out and as we know through all that she's done, she's played instrumental roles in creating PRSSA and nurturing young people and mentoring a number of us along the way. And I would say that of the contemporary historical figures, I'd rank Betsy right up there. Having been actively involved in corporations for about 30 years and 5 years in agencies and doing a lot of volunteer work for nonprofits, I can say no. The only thing that would change would be that in the nonprofit world, and especially in academia, that you would find that patience is even more required than it is in corporate settings and agency settings where I think decisions can be made faster. I think that finding every experience possible. We have a young person on our staff that we just hired probably about 7 months ago, Kevin Sagi. Kevin headed PRSSA nationally, and matter of fact, I met him at a Planck Center board meeting, and impressed with the guy to the point that we made him an intern, and within, I think, 2 months, less than 2 months, he was the fastest promoted person in the office. And part of the reason is because he doesn't just stop with doing the job. It's what else can I do? And in that process, he's learning far more than a lot of other young people coming into the profession. So he's the first one to raise his hand to volunteer. He will check in with his various supervisors and ask, what else can I do? And he's involved outside of the office. And so I think he becomes very well-rounded. I think the key thing, it goes back to just find ways to get young people involved. And if you just stick to the coursework, it's not going to happen. We see book-smart people come in for interviews and people who come in with experience. And every time I have to choose between the two, experience in college or nonprofits or whatever they're doing outside of the classroom, always tilts the scale in favor of that individual. So I think that, yeah, academics are very important, but it's the experience they're gaining in college that are most crucial in my thinking. I think that, you can learn the concepts, and the theories are very important to understand, because then all of a sudden you can become self-aware that that's what it's all about. I'm better at that kind of leadership style than this one. But leadership is, I would almost say you're born with it, but that's not probably true. But I do think it comes very early in your life, and probably definitely before college. So I think that a lot of people say, well, you're going to go to such and such a college because that's where you go if you want to become a CEO. You've got to be in Boston. And, they had that drive before they picked that academic institution. So I think a lot of people will point to those experiences and think that you can teach it, but you can't. I think you're almost born with it, or at least it comes early in your life. The profession needs to do a number of things. Number one, which I think we've seen through the Planck Center with recognizing through its Legends book, the fact that they've identified and presented some role models, some historical and some more recent, that are able to give their insights into the profession, and then they're willing to share it with others. Arthur Page Society does the same thing with creating awards programs and getting recognition. Where it stops short is these leaders, once identified, are very busy people generally. And I don't think that there is a conduit to get them more engaged in opportunities to go speak to college students, to speak to PRSSA chapters, and to become more engaged, because it's just the nature of their jobs. There's so much else to do. So I think there almost needs to be a clearinghouse or some way to engage the senior members of the profession, especially if they can in one-on-one situations, to really work with young people to build the next group of leaders. If you will, back to Kevin Sagi, he's going to be a leader in the profession. And so he's worth the time of investment and that we're going to give to him. And if at some time, he's going to have to make a decision to move into a corporate job or elsewhere, we're going to be helping make that happen, just to make him well-rounded as possible. So I think that we have to dip in, we have to address issues like diversity as well, and we need to be more active rather than sitting back and not playing a role that's going to make some change in how we develop these future leaders, because I think we are lacking. There's a lot of talent, but I don't think we're really grooming the next Betsy Planks and Dan Edelmans out there. I think it comes out of the fact that a leader has to take risks, and if they feel very strongly about something, they have to put a stake in the ground. And too often public relations practitioners, depending on the longevity of their careers or desired longevity, are holding back from giving counsel that they should. So I think when you say, okay, I believe this strongly enough that I'll get fired over it, that you're probably going to be the best service to the corporation, the organization you work for. So the example that I would use is when I was at Sears heading public relations, we had signed a contract with Benetton, the apparel company, and we were going to be selling Benetton products in the stores, and it was going to be a huge new product for the company. And we'd already committed millions of dollars to this. Well, unbeknownst to us, Benetton was going to launch an ad campaign featuring convicted murderers. And it just, the minute I heard the ad campaign, I said, we're in serious trouble and we need to do something about it. And I said, no, that's Benetton. They're going to separate it from Sears Benetton. And I said, no, Benetton's Benetton, and started the groundswell internally to say we're going to have difficulties. Well, when I started getting calls from mothers of victims saying, how could you possibly be a party to this? And then organizations around the country started mobilizing, saying they were going to be boycotting Sears. And this was our core customer that was threatening us in that regard. I just told the CEO and the head of merchandising that we had to make a decision on this, and they said, let's see if it blows over. And I said, even if it blows over, it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, Benetton did not tell us about this. The rules have changed, and we really need to make a decision. What was interesting, that conversation probably lasted about 11 minutes, and the CEO asked the head of merchandising how much it was going to cost us, and it was $16 million, and the CEO agreed and said, pull it from the shelves. And the merchandise was removed, and the next thing you know, we were getting awards from all these organizations, and we became cult heroes within our customer base, which I think was a very important thing to happen. But what the CEO wanted to hear, and the head of marketing, they were desperately wanting to hear that, oh no, we can handle it PR-wise. and we just said it's not gonna go away. Since you're talking about young professionals, and they usually have a lot of other things to read, this is a very simple book to read, and I'd highly recommend it. It's by Bob Kornecki, and Bob wrote this book, How to Thrive in the Public Relations Business. It has 35 practical tips. It is so easy to read and understand, and we've purchased these books and we give them to all interns and young people who start in our office. And people are coming in for interviews saying, what's PR all about? And it's a simple book. It has all the right pointers. And if you read it and you say it's a bunch of bunk, then you probably shouldn't be in PR. But if you read it and say, yeah, this is really what this business is all about, then we know that they're going to be long-term public relations professionals, because easy, simple advice, and I'd highly recommend it. Talent. The fact that we have a groundswell of young people coming into the profession and the need is so broad, what's happening is we're not having enough time to train them effectively in many cases for the demand on the kind of quality PR that's being expected. So what occurs is corporations and others who, if you just use the agency business, they're asking for people who are already overextended to do the work. Oh, you know, that person's really good, but I want you there. And all of a sudden, the senior people with the more deep experience are having to appear and do more work, because corporations especially are not willing to bring the young people up. So back to the training question is that we have to do more. And I think sometimes we just simply have to say, come with me to this meeting, you know? And if you're in an agency, it's not going to be billable. You know, you're going to come, but you're going to learn, because it's not going to happen unless they get the experience. And then the senior people who are being called on can say, you know, you really need to talk to Megan or Joe, because they were there when we worked on such and such. And so we have to build the credibility of the younger people in the profession. And I think until we do that, they're not going to kind of get the experiences they need to get to the next level. We were fortunate when I was in corporate America, there are a lot fewer PR people out there. And so I had to do everything, and I was way in over my head in my first couple of jobs on what was being demanded of me, especially in crisis situations. But it was through those crises that I learned and gained all the experience that made me apparently valuable to the next 3 or 4 employers that I had. Absolutely, positively. There's 20 years ago, we were fighting for credibility. CEOs were very often saying, well, let's hire a director of PR. I don't need anyone more senior than that. And let's make them report to the head of human resources or the law department. But, you know, that'd be fine. And today, CEOs, as confirmed by the Page study and other work that's been done, are saying, I want the best possible public relations talent I can have, and if necessary, even if I have a number of direct reports, the person needs to report to me. I need to rely on this person to be the pulse of the organization and tell me straight, face to face, what's going on. And it's not perfect yet. I mean, there's still probably 40% of corporations and major organizations out there that aren't that enlightened. But when I started in this profession, maybe it was 2 or 3%. It was very few. And so we've made great progress. Oh, be prepared to probably never work harder in the first few years, but you're going to have a lot of fun. And when you all of a sudden wake up one day and you realize that all of your friends hate their jobs and you love your job, that it's a nice profession to be in. You know, you'll never feel like you worked in a real job if you're in PR. And that's not to belittle it. It's just the engagement of what this profession offers. I worked very hard, but I always finish the day saying that is real. That really feels good, even on bad days when we're in the middle of a crisis. So I think, you know, you got to pay your dues though, and I think there's a lot of desire that I want to jump into this and be successful right away. And what you do is you work really hard, and it will happen sooner. But if you jump in saying I'm going to be a hot shot and I'm going to really go to the top in this profession, it probably won't happen. So you just, again, back to patience, and don't take yourself too seriously, and make sure you listen to everyone around you, and you will succeed. I shouldn't probably give out my secrets, but I have the receptionist test, and if there's somebody that comes in for an interview and I wonder if this person might be just right for the job, I'll go talk to Georgia and ask her what she thought of the person. And usually it confirms my point of view. And it's first impressions, it's being able to treat everyone equally and come in, and if you're pleasant to the receptionist and everyone along the way, so that goes through personality. And then two, writing. And too many young people can't write well. And I just find that it's critical. And so we give a writing test, and every time I have agreed to hire anyone under a C, like a C- writer, I made a mistake. So I think that personality and writing, we can train everything else into the experience, because you will need those two essentials to survive and to thrive in the profession.